Welcome. This is our final episode for the season, so just want to welcome all of you. My co-host is sitting here in the front, Amanda. We'll see her a little bit later. But today we're doing, we called it for 2 years, we were just talking about this earlier, 2021 and 2022. We did 4 Brothers Talkin. Now we got 5. We've adopted David today, so. So, welcome to Fresh Perspectives, and I'm going to have the guys introduce themselves. So,
hello, everyone. Dr. Jashon Banks Sr, faculty, criminal justice. Got here back in September 2019, so glad to be here.
I'm Godfrey Drake. I'm the head men's basketball coach here, but I'm also Dean of Students at Olympic Middle School, not too far from here in Auburn.
Welcome. Thank you.
I am David Jackson. I am a outreach specialist in financial aid, and I'm happy to be here.
And I am Korland Simmons, your friendly public records manager here at Green River College. I've been here now since 2017, I think. It's kind of wild. But yeah.
Great. Well, now we're back together, guys.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Right?
Wow.
That's good.
All right. In person.
Well, that's
I know.
yeah,
In
right.
person. That's the
Right.
thing, because first 2 shows I think we did
Entirely remote.
entirely remote.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I only knew y'all
So-
like this.
Right. Yeah. That's right. That's right. That's right. So, just to start off, we got to congratulate our good friend here, Godfrey, for the men's basketball championship.
Definitely.
You had a long, long road to haul there.
Yeah, man, it was a crazy year.
Yep.
We didn't even play here, but it's such a good group, and it's just been a fun journey, and to be the first to do something, is pretty cool. So
Good.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think it's more than cool. I mean, I think the last time we got it was what? When the school institution became one?
1969.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I think that's more than great. That's, I mean, that's
Predates
phenomenal.
most of us up here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it starts.
Stating a
It does predate, yes. Anyway, let's move on. Yeah, so that's a great accomplishment to actually, all the work that you had to put in and not being here. You had to go to Tacoma, you had to go all over the place pretty much.
Yeah, it took a lot of buy-in from everybody that was involved. Definitely one of the toughest years as far as just logistically speaking. But our group just they believed in what I was telling them. And there was never any part of time where you could see that they were like, I don't know if this can happen. So it was a testament to how connected our group was, and so I'm just grateful that we had that opportunity, and look forward to trying to do it again.
Okay.
Definitely.
Well, I think that says a lot, Godfrey, about your leadership, because I don't think that those young men could have come together in that way without having a real guiding principle. And so I think it says a lot about how you led them, that they could continue to believe that despite whatever their difficulties were.
Yeah.
Yes, that's something that we discussed a lot. I know everybody has these things. They put hashtag this, hashtag that. We actually lived our hashtag. 5G was a very big deal for our program. It's 5 different G's that actually mean something, and the biggest one is the Gator over me, and putting the Gator before everything else. And something that we probably will talk about up here is just taking that stigma of men don't talk, taking that out of it and actually giving them the space. We met in a circle every day, and I allowed them on certain days because I felt that way too. Certain days they're just like, Coach, this sucks, you know, and giving them that space to be able to share that and not shun anybody for like feeling some type of way about anything. It brought us even closer together to share in that experience. So I think it was just our openness and willingness to share and not being fearful of that man stigma, you know. I think that was what did it in the end, because you would see other teams breaking at some points in time, and our guys were never fazed by anything. So I think it was a lot of it. So
Definitely.
That's definitely. Because, like, you know, I know there are people here that have gone through the leadership program that I do here, but when you think about leadership, it's like putting those things aside and just, and it's like letting folks express, share. That's really true leadership from my standpoint. And the fact that you supported them in making that difference. So these are going to be some great young men going forward. So you made a difference in their lives, I'm sure.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and that's something that, you know, we all have to hold those values, you know, to the fullest, because like I've shared with others, like one of my former players is getting married this summer and I'm officiating his wedding. You know? So it lets you know, like that you're actually connected with your players. And it's not this superficial, you do something for me and now you're gone, so thank you for your service and goodbye. Nothing like that. You know, like these are lifelong relationships for me. That's just the only way I know how to do it. So,
Good. I think you were going to say something.
I was just going to speak on the sense of like when you're speaking of leadership, the selflessness you put in there. And I can just sit here as a former athlete thinking like I never got a chance to play in front of my home crowd. You know, all those obstacles that's been put in place, you know, resource-wise, you know, what was there. And I don't think that, I think that need to be shown in that story, in your story. You need to actually show those things, some of the hardships you went through. Because I mean, thinking of those players, like I wasn't even in front of my institution playing. I'm playing at someone else's court and going around here, there, everywhere. So, I mean, that speaks a lot of volume into what you did, but also just what else can we do to help that as an institution? We need to help that. We need to fix some things. We need to provide a little bit better to make sure that we don't have another year like that where our student athletes have a place where they can feel like they are part of. And again, that's just hard. I'm just really putting myself in the shoes there. Like I never got to play in front of my own home, but y'all kept it together. That's the most important piece. So we got to figure out a way. We got to fix some of these things. Provide with our basketball team, track teams, what they need to be great. So
and to be successful. I mean, that's the biggest part of it. And you've given them some real lessons in that process. So that's something that they'll always have for them for the rest of their lives. So, well, thank you very much. I want to change gears a little bit because I know we've all kind of talked about. We talked about, there's an article out right now about hiring and how names affect. Basically, there's racism related to names. And this was a 2-year study, if I remember correctly, that was done. And they found that car dealerships, I can't remember, and Korland, you might be able to jump in here. Car dealerships. Retail, I think, was a huge issue too. When it came down to hiring or not hiring people of color. So, thoughts, gentlemen?
Well, you know, I will say, and I will own this, that, you know, when my first nephew was born, and he was the one that obviously at the time felt the closest to me because he was the only one. But when he was born, I had a really stirring conversation with my sister, and I said, there is a box in which I think his name can and should live, and it really ought not step outside of that because I don't think he'll be treated well. I don't think he'll have a good shot at jobs, right? I think his life is going to be made more difficult if you name him a certain way. And it hadn't occurred to me at the time just how much of a self-inflicted wound that was, right? To say that I have feelings about you naming him something that doesn't feel like it is mainstream enough
Right.
to be out in the world, rather than saying that kid gets to have his name and he gets to have people look at him with respect and admiration, despite the fact that it's not a mainstream name, right? So I own that, right? That was a moment for me, I think, years later when I thought, that was so unfair, right? Like I had a hand in saying you couldn't have something that was more interesting. Not that there's anything wrong with his name, right? It's fine. But that was a revelation. That was a revelation for me to come to this point of, oh, right, you did that, and you were trying to be helpful, but you also did something that looked upon our naming conventions as less than.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I would say for sure that is a tough one, and what you just said actually makes me think about my own son, and because he's named Dakari, and there was some people in my family for sure that were like, you just made this a little bit harder for him, and I said, well, his name means happiness, so I'm not going to take that away from him.
Yeah.
And it was definitely challenging for me, because even thinking about myself walking into certain interviews as I was coming out of college and stuff like that, and you'd walk in and you go, oh, I wasn't expecting that when I saw the name Godfrey.
Okay.
And not really knowing how to respond to that, and just thinking about that when you brought up that topic. Like, I do remember walking into spaces and feeling like, oh, what do they expect when they, hear my name or somebody else's name? You know what I mean? And that's a big topic. So
It is.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Definitely.
Yeah.
My name get chopped up all the time, so I told my son already, he's named after me. I'm like, it's gonna be rough. So, but I try to continue to instill in him just to love who he is and be who he is, and then continue bringing down those pillars. I've been doing that for him anyway. He's only a 7, so but by the time he get of that age, he'll be well known. He'll be good. But it is a serious topic of discussion. Dealing with some of these organizations with their own institutional racism, bias, discrimination, et cetera. So,
So I remember, this predates some of you, when Roots came out, and there were a lot. I'm sorry, that's gonna be a running joke for us. I just want you to know. But when Roots came out on TV, and I want to say that was mid-70s.
Yep.
There were a lot of women, black women, who were naming their kids after characters from, and I remember my mother, at the time my mother was the principal, this was progressive public school, I guess, school for pregnant teenagers. And so she was the principal there at the time, and she would come home and she'd say, I understand why, but it's gonna be tough. The kids that were named after some of the characters. And when I think about it now and I look at it, I mean, you talk about walking in being Godfrey, and I talk to people on the phone and they walk in and they're probably expecting a white guy, but of course they get this and they're like, when people are sitting there with their mouth open, like, yeah, this is what you get. Those are the kinds of things that you run into. Yeah. Have any of you ever experienced other things? I mean, that's a good example of walking in. But in terms of how we are perceived when we walk in, you have a biblical name, I have a biblical name, walking in.
Yeah. I myself, I noticed that when I first started applying for jobs when I was in high school, and it was that, all right, we're looking for David. I'm like, hey, I'm right here, and they're, you're David? I'm like, yeah, it's on my birth certificate. I mean, that's but hey, maybe I'm not, But that's one of the things that I try not to do when I'm working with the student that comes in the office. we have a lot of students who are coming here for, they're the first ones in their family to go to college, and they're really excited. And one thing I try to make sure I never do is to come up with my own version of their name. I always try to make sure, even if it's something I'm not sure about, I'll say it to the best of my ability and ask them if I said it right. I'm not just gonna say, all right, I'm gonna call you Sam. No, that's not their name.
That's not their name.
Now if there's something that they would prefer to be called, so be it, but I'm not gonna just decide what's important as far as their name goes and their identity and whatnot.
So true.
Yeah, and I think we have a tendency to do that with students especially.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, and that's part of dominant culture, I think, is we don't want to learn, we want to make it easy. I say we, but we want to make it easier. I don't believe in that personally with when I'm working with anybody. It's like, I want to learn your name, I want to know your name, and I'm going to call you by your name.
Right.
I know for us culturally, names are important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so it's interesting you mention it from the cultural standpoint. We go to the theater regularly, and one of the last shows that we saw was I think a Pulitzer winner called English, and it's set in Iran with a group of Iranian students preparing for the TOEFL. And at one point, there's a mother who talks about how her son, who lives in Canada, has sort of changed his name, and the teacher kind of makes this suggestion about name changing and how it can ease things. And the woman responds to her and she says, "I'm sorry, but our mothers get to name us." And that was one of the most profound things that I heard in that. Not that the rest of the play wasn't great, but that just hit like a ton of bricks. Was like, right. Nobody gets to tell me what my name is, because the name that I wear is the one that my mother gave me, and I will always honor that, right? And I will expect anybody who interacts with me to honor that as well.
Yep. And I think culturally that's, we're all, you named your son after, after you. So, I mean, there's a reason why those names are important. And a lot of times that's what we have for us.
Right.
So
It's something I do as a faculty member here. I give nameplates, not just to always remember all my students' names, because I got hundreds of them, but I say, hey, decorate it. I want you to decorate your nameplate, your name. I want you to decorate it as an expression of yourself. Some of them, some people really put color into it. They really, draw, make it nice and pretty. Some may just scribble on there, and I'm like, that's how you see yourself? Like, stand proud of your name. Like, regardless of how you may feel at this moment, I want you to decorate it. I want to see your expression. So that's one thing I do. And then I have my couple students that may want to be called something else as a shortened part of their name. That's what they prefer. Got it. But I'm like, I'm always going to call you by your name, period, because it's a respect thing.
Right.
I don't treat my classroom as necessarily as a hierarchy type of thing. It's just like, hey, I'm here not necessarily just to teach you, I'm here to guide you. And also, I want you to be able to stand firm on your beliefs and your name. Your name is everything. So that's like a little tool I do for them. I want them to see how they do it. So like I say, some students can put it all on their computer, on the back of their screen. So when they screen up, I can see it.
Nice.
It's pretty legit how you see it. Like, oh, you see an expression of themselves.
Yeah.
So I think that's, again, we're talking about names. Stand on it. I stand 10 toes.
I love that.
Yeah, I could just think two things with my own kids and family. Just my oldest daughter's name is Alea, and then there's Dakari and there's Malia, my youngest. The older two, obviously, there have been so many teachers that they've had so far that literally tell them exactly what you said you wouldn't do. Right. I'm just gonna call you this, or I'm just gonna call you that, and I literally, right off the bat, I'm there. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. We're not gonna do that. And it's like, oh, I would never. It's that immediate I would never, and it's my kids have already felt that that thing that we've all felt before, and I've had to have that conversation. But it was stemming from myself and she's not my baby sister, but she's the baby out of the sisters in my family. Her name's Chaka, right? And she's just like me, struggled with our names in school because the other siblings are Pam and Monique and William, very easily said and, whatever. But just thinking about our own struggle with our own name and then having someone say it wrong or you don't, I know Chaka would, go for job interviews and she already knew she wasn't going to get it. You know what I mean? Just off name alone. And I learned that at one district that I worked in. I was on a panel. They were looking through all these candidates and some really qualified people. And I saw the yes for interview, the maybes, and the no's. And all the no's had multiple syllables. And I was just looking through and I'm like, oh, wow. And I've never been more frustrated with myself because I didn't have that voice at that point in time or belief in myself in that moment to go, hey, wait a minute. This ain't cool.
Right.
But
So you're saying their qualifications is not important, it's just the name. That's what you're basically saying.
they were literally.
So the name is like the cutoff.
Judging the
Well,
book
it's
by
kind
the
of
cover.
interesting that ends up being, right, the report talked particularly about auto industry and retail and so forth. And if you're talking to a salesperson, I got to imagine some of the thinking is, but I just want the salesperson to have a really, really simple name because then people can come in and just call it and make it really, really easy. Like, I think if the salesperson has a more interesting name, I'm more likely to remember it. If it's a common name, I'm likely to forget.
Yeah. Do you think trust plays a role in that, though? Does a name, I'm just throwing this out, name and color.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, personally, I would think that it kind of plays into one's own insecurities or what they don't understand. Maybe they haven't grown up with a Jabari, so they're like, I don't know about this. And, it's tough because my last job, I was a part of the Framework for Change Committee. And I really took pride in it. And, just like, you were saying, I noticed there was so many good applicants, right? In this stack of, we're not going to call back, right? So I'm just looking at the qualifications. Oh man, got 8 years and this, and okay, good. Community service, bet. Why are they in this pile? And then I'm looking in this other pile of, Mike's and, and James. And I'm like, why are they even getting a call back? Like, look at, I had those qualifications when I was 14. Like, what?
Right.
But, yeah, right, Mark. I'm like literally, looking at this. And so my supervisor kind of noticed that. And, he started to try to detour me from being on the committee more and more. I noticed that. It was always something. Oh, I don't want it to cut into your time. So I was like, I'll take a shorter lunch. Well, I just don't want you to worry too much about, any of these employees, because, we're probably going to find what we're looking for anyway. I'd like to be on the committee.
That says a lot.
I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but it's like, actually you are. Why don't you just come out and say it? You're going out of your way.
Going out of your way.
Right, so. Yeah, I don't know. I think it could just be someone's just not understanding, not coming out of their own comfort zone and just giving somebody the opportunity. It's like the, judge a book by its cover, right? Yeah. This person could have a name that you've never heard of, but they could be just such a scholar that can teach you something, right?
Right.
But you'll never know that without giving them that opportunity.
Yeah.
So,
Definitely.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's amazing to me, though, and that's a good point. And just have two examples here of how people actually look at resumes. In my previous work, before coming here, one of the things that they would do is mask everything. So all you saw were qualifications. The problem I had where I was is that we were proximity to Detroit, And so there was always this concern that we would discriminate about people who lived in Detroit, coming to Ann Arbor to work. You know, oh, they're not going to want to drive. Oh, so they started masking everything, so that all you saw were qualifications.
Yeah.
You know, and that's helpful. It's very helpful.
That's a very good practice.
But yeah, it's a good practice. So unfortunate, but it happens.
Well, but it also, you know, it doesn't just get at the racial angle, but that can also get at the gender angle as well.
Exactly.
Because then you don't know, right? It's just qualifications.
Just qualifications all the way around. And you can change qualifications. I know we've done that here at the college. We've changed, you know, the qualifications so that, you know, there are jobs where you don't need a bachelor's degree or master's or whatever. That makes a huge difference. And that opens up, you know, and I'm going to say this person's name, no offense to anybody. Elon Musk has come out and said things. Heard a gasp, I'm sorry. He'll probably come after me later. But no, there's a whole group of folks that have come out saying things about unqualified people. I don't want unqualified people flying my airplane.
I don't either.
Well, I don't either. I mean, who does?
But I'm not about to make a determination about how qualified that person is to do that job based on how I view them, right? Show me what they've done.
Yeah.
Can Leroy fly?
Yeah.
That's all I need to know. Can Leroy fly?
Can we? Exactly.
Much beyond that, and I don't care. Right?
That's all I need to know.
If he has all of
Can
those
Jabari
certifications,
fly?
That's right.
Hey, that's it.
So I'm more concerned about if they have the qualification to do it.
Right.
That's all I care about.
Right. And especially since we seem to be living through a time of, for lack of a better term, just know-nothingness, right? Like the badge of honor that seems to be attached to the fact that you don't know anything and that is a point of pride. That's not a world that I am used to living in. It is certainly not a world that I was raised in. And so that's just difficult for me. So the idea that we want to just kind of push expertise aside is just like, but why? Why? Who does that help? Ultimately.
Yeah. And I've always kind of looked at it as the dumbing down. I call it dumbing down of America, so to speak.
Yeah.
That it's easier to not know something than to try and learn something.
I guess, but I mean, you know, I guess my perspective is it's way harder to know nothing because then you're constantly having to have somebody tell you stuff, as opposed to, wait, no, I learned this already. I can move on. I can do other stuff, right? I don't have to keep going back over the same thing over and over. Like, not knowing is actually, as far as I'm concerned, way harder.
Yeah. So education, your kids, you've got kids.
Yeah.
We are a higher ed institution. What are you doing with your kids? How are you training them? How are you getting them to understand? We've talked about names. We've talked about, you know, issues of racism, and you know, talking like a white guy on the phone and walking in and having somebody drop their mouth open because they're like, that doesn't match what I was thinking.
Right.
So
Speak so well.
you speak so well.
Yes.
Should I not?
Should I not? Should I shut up?
Yes, indeed.
That's when I asked, when did language have a color to it?
I know. Yeah.
I don't get it. You know.
I'm gonna respond next time I get that.
Yeah. Why you talk so white? I'm like, what?
What?
Yeah, I know. That's
Gets
So,
me.
that's that cannibalism thing inside of our own too.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
'Cause
So how do we work with our kids? How do we, you know, with those, you have children, how do you have those conversations?
Ooh,
man,
it's he's in.
I'm throwing them at
Yeah,
you.
he's in elementary. So right now we've been doing multiplication and division.
Sure.
Oh,
Please.
But we do have the conversation on understanding that, you know, there are color differences, which he already acknowledged. I already told my son, I just gave him doctor because he's smarter than me. So he seriously, I'm like, I don't know. He already told me he wanted to be an astronaut, a nuclear engineer, and a swim coach. So I don't know how he know what that is already, a nuclear engineer, but he told me. So I'm like, okay, yeah, you can just have this. But no, he's just in that, I don't know, I have a bit of conversations with him, even dealing with the sense of when he's dealing with his teacher. So I always ask him, who is his teacher? Do they talk to you? Do they call your name wrong? Because I don't know, you always get Jason, Joshua, all these different things in there. And I ask him, how do he feel about that? And he's very aware of his feelings, which is, like I say, is remarkable. It doesn't offend him, but he always say he corrects him. He doesn't let anyone hit him. Because I told him, you better hit him back. Hit him back. And then you come tell me, and then we gonna figure it out. But I know it sounds terrible, but he's just, again, he likes to play, he likes to share. I taught him how to share everything with everyone. I know when he gets older, I'm gonna have to have that conversation, as in when you're dealing with law enforcement, when you're dealing with, someone of authoritative figure, how to respond. Yeah. So I know when he gets couple years older, I'm gonna have to have that conversation, especially having SROs in school, school resource officers. Again, knowing how to speak, knowing how to not create a issue or create any kind of nothing to put itself on that like spectrum where it's like, yeah, we don't watch you. Because he's already a bigger kid. He's 7 years old and he's like 80 pounds. So I always think about those things. Stature means life. Yep. When I walk into a room, first thing my students ask, do you lift weights? Do you play football? Like the same stuff. So like I always got to be aware of that. When I work with law enforcement agencies, the first thing they ask, well, why you ain't working with us? You're a big guy. I'm like, wait, what? I don't want to. I already did that. So it's like just being aware of that because people, some people look at that in a different angle. So I know I kind of dibble-dabble through there. It's not just about academics. I literally ask him how he feels in the space that he in. Do he feel like he have a voice? Does he feel like that he's being picked on? Just little things like that in his learning experience. So far, nothing, but I consistently had that conversation. So if it does happen, he's comfortable enough to talk to me about it. Because sometimes kids oppress that away like, oh, no, everything's cool, and it's not. And that's when you start seeing the behavior issues. So,
yeah, I've definitely had some, as with my son being in middle school now. We've had a couple talks where for sure, you watch that Fresh Prince episode where he got the lip quiver and his Uncle Phil having that moment. It's one of them type moments. Where he just looks at me and like, he just can't believe some of the conversations we have to have at that point in time. Because it was some stuff, his friend group, very mixed friend group. But they did some normal middle school stuff. But their parents reacted in the ones that did not look like him, reacted in a very, usual, just, hey, you're going to make smarter decisions, blah, blah, blah. He and I had a different conversation. And I just expressed to him, I was like, the safety officer that showed up and the way that you were talking, I'm just going to let you know that could have gone in a whole different direction. And I know right now it's going to seem like my dad is insane. But I had to sit him down and explain some things to him about expectations that people are going to have for how you react. And I had to have my mother, who, was, like I've shared with you guys before, was chief of police back in Jackson, Mississippi before, and had her have that conversation with him about, hey, even as a former cop, I'm going to tell you what is discussed, and he cried, and that hurt me, that he was experiencing that at that point in time, but it also was necessary. We've also had the conversation where I have to battle it in myself because I have, just like him, had this long, career dealing with athletics. And being proud of that, but making sure people understand there's way more to me than that. Because the first assumption when you see, oh, he's a hooper, he did this, you had to. I'm like, yeah, but I also have my master's degree, and I'm also, very intelligent. I do public speaking. Oh, thank you. I can do that too. Right. So don't just put me in a box, And so he is a tall young man for his grade, and the first question is always, do you play basketball?
Been there.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's your dad? And I'm like, no. He thinks I'm joking. You don't have to play basketball. You don't have to do anything with sports. He likes to do YouTube stuff. I said, son, you could act. You could do whatever you want. I'm going to be proud of you regardless. Just do that thing that makes you happy, but don't feel like because of that you have this ability to do this thing, that's what you have to be known for. And he finally understood that the other day. We had another conversation about that. You were asking about education. I was like, you don't have to go to college on a athletic scholarship. And that's literally what he wrote in the paper one time, is he had to.
Yeah.
That's how he would get there. And I'm like, nah, see, that's that picture that we're painting again.
Right.
You got to be a rapper, or you got to be, something in sports. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to fight that narrative with him, and that's
a challenge.
It's really hard, man. Don't even get me started with my girl, so I ain't even going down there.
We'll save that for
Yeah, that's another time.
Next episode.
Yeah, I was gonna say something about my daughter, but pray for me, please. But seriously, one of the things I always tell my daughter, she's 16, and she'll tell me about different instances in class when there's a substitute, of course, and some of the things that the kids are doing and everything. But I always try to tell her, I say, Bree, you need to do better. You need to do better. I tell her that academically. I tell her that in life. I said, you can't look at the next person and say, well, they got away with this, or why can I do this? I said, you know what? Mom and dad's always going to have your back, but you need to be accountable yourself. Because when you enter a room, there's going to be some people who don't want to judge you fairly. They're going to look for anything, to pick apart. And I said, all I ask is that you give 100% and more, whatever you do. And that's all I want. And my son, he's 7, and he loves to learn and then tell you what he knows, right? So, right. Yeah.
Oh, that's
so, right. So I one of the things I try to instill in him is always ask questions. A lot of times he's the only, kid of color in his class. And I say, you know what, don't let that discourage you. If you have a question for the teacher, raise your hand. Raise your hand. As many times as you want, raise your hand. And so that's one of the things I always get from his teachers. David asks a lot of questions. And then he tells me the answers, and I didn't even know the answers. And I went to Google, and he was right. And so, I always tell him, I say, ask questions if you don't know something. I'd rather you ask and get the right answer than sit in the back feeling ashamed because you don't know the answer, and then you still don't know the answer. Never be afraid to ask for help, and knowledge is key.
Yeah, I
agree. And I tell students every day that I go to the high schools out here, I say, no matter what you want to do, you're going to need some sort of education. I said, I don't care if you're going to be a professor, electrician, whatever. You want someone who's skilled in whatever, your field is. I don't want a doctor working on me who has no education and, no, I'm good. But, I tell them, right, it's important. And I try to, tell these kids that I say, look, there's so many options out there. Never feel that you don't have a way to pursue your dreams. You just have to find that road. It might look different than your neighbor, it was for your parents, but you know, you gotta do the research. You gotta do the work. You know.
Yeah.
You're welcome to my class anytime. I need somebody to just stand there and tell them the same thing. Just give 100%, because some of my phenomenal staff folks out here be doing work, and I be over there like, it's not me.
Right.
It's not me. I don't know what else to do. So please come in there and just encourage them to go hard. I'm like, I'm not giving you anything. You got to earn everything you're getting in here. Like, you got to learn the material. So I love that you're saying that. So I mean that, like, you welcome to come stand in the front. I'm gonna go in the back. And I'm just going, because it needs someone else to tell them the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, you're not given anything. You came in here to learn and earn something, not be given to you. If I give it to you, you didn't learn anything.
Right. That's right.
So I'm sorry, you can't work next to me. I still work in industry. I work with WSP, Washington State Patrol. I am not about to be standing out there and you don't know what you're doing. So
What I would add on to that, know that your path is not going to look like anybody else's, but also know that the place that you're trying to get to might take you longer than it took somebody else. And that is perfectly okay. Right? There's no time limit. As long as you are still on this side of the dirt, as we used to say at home, as long as you are on this side of the dirt, you still have a chance, right? You still have an opportunity, and you can still go out and do it. And there's no rule that says it has to look any particular way, right?
That's right.
You get to define what your success is.
yeah, that's it.
And I think that's the biggest challenge. I know my nephew's going to kill me because I'm sure he'll see this, but that was a challenge I know that we had in working with my nephew. It's just like, you know, it's going to might take longer or this or that, but you know, having that communication with the kids, your own children are a good example of how you work with students. And how important it is here on our campus that you're working with students. So I wish I sort of do, sort of don't. Wish I worked with students more. I do some work with students, but not a lot. But periodically I get pulled into things.
It gets difficult. Sometimes I want to put my drill sergeant hat on and go straight U.S. Army, but sometimes I can't. And I do it for my son. I tell him quick, like, I can't do that here, but I try to be as stern, because I tell them in industry, it's going to be even harder, because now you're working with, you know, just in the respect of my cisgender women that are coming into industry, like, they're going to be treated like some of those officers been there for so long, and they're going to be like, I don't want to work with her. She don't know how to shoot. She's weak. She don't know what she's doing. That type of stuff. So I say, I'm getting you to be prepared for that type of mindset where you can fight through that and continue going forward in your career. Just for example, same thing, cisgender men, same thing. When you go in there and, you know, you got some of these veterans in there, they're like, I don't want to work with the young buck. So you got to be able to fight that stigma. That's why I be on them so hard, because I'm like, you know, in all respect, everyone, you know, in my industry, you can lose your life quickly. If you're not on your toes, you can lose your life. So it's like we getting you prepared. And I want you to be successful. As I say, I want you to come back to Green River. I want you to come back in uniform so we all can see you looking nice and pretty and serving our community. Like, that's a proud point. So continue. I know you don't all work with them in that way, but we need help. Hold them accountable.
I think that's the part that I think I'm getting, because, you know, I did used to work on campus, but now going to a middle school and seeing some of our students of color there, you know, when it's career day or whatever, they won't go to certain stands because they're like, Mr. Drake, there's no way that we go there. Like, we don't work in those fields. And I'm like, it hurts me. Because it's like, you try to steer them that way, and they're like, nobody in my family does this, nobody does that. You know, I'm just supposed to go. And then you hear that supposed to go, and it's something that we're still missing. Like, we can say that we've advanced, but we are doing some things better, but there's still that stigma of where certain people are supposed to go work and where you belong. And we have to be honest about that.
Is that exposure? Is a lack of exposure?
It is. I think that's a big part of it. It gets at that point that you made about, well, nobody in my family does this. It's like, if you don't see it, right, if you don't have the representation, it's going to be a lot harder for you to have that in your head as I could do that, as an option, or maybe I could do, right? That kind of representation really matters, and that's the thing that we've been saying over and over and over again about DEI initiatives, frankly. But because a lot of that is about representation, it is about having people in these higher level places that you can actually look up to and say, that's something I can do because I see that person over there doing it. I can go and I can have a conversation with that person and they can tell me what they did to get there. And then I can go back and try to figure out if that's something I can make happen for myself. But if you don't have those people, the idea that you're going to be able to just wake up some morning surrounded by a family of people who don't do that, who are never going to do that, and that you're going to just pop out and be this thing, right? Like there aren't a tarot reader that I've seen before. It sort of said to me that I'm kind of like an alien to my family. And I thought, well, that's probably about right. But I understand, right, being an alien, that there aren't a ton of aliens, right? Like that's just not that's not the usual. That's not the standard thing that happens. So we need young people to see that there are things that are possible for them that are outside of what they see on a daily basis.
Well, that's the good. I'm glad you said that because it made me think about the people I work with right now. Our school is 76%, I want to say, students of color, right? And so we have an administrative team right now. Out of the 4 of us, 3 black dudes, and that don't happen. We all know that don't happen like that.
Right.
So when people walk in, they're like, "Oh, we want to see the principal." And he's literally standing right next to him. And they're like, "Oh!" And then now you see some of our boys, specifically of color, when he says to them, "It's possible for you to be a principal now," they actually respond differently because they are looking at 3 of them, like boom, right there in their faces. So that representation you're talking about is a very, very big deal for them to see that, because it almost didn't happen because there were staff members go, well, not staff members in our building, but just we've heard people that'll be like, "Oh, we should put them in different like buildings." We're like, "Oh, well, you don't put all the white people in, like when there's a staff of white people, you don't split them up like what?" So yeah, that was a conversation for sure that had to be had. But like it's important that they can see that it can function, with that, thing running a building.
Right.
And that was important. And we see parents now, they respond differently to our building now, you know what I mean? It's a big deal.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, you made me laugh a little bit, and the only reason I laughed was because what is it about groups of black folks coming together?
Congregating.
Is it? Is there something? What? I worked at a company, and I had several. There weren't that many black folks there, but we would see each other in the hall, and we would stop, and we'd talk for a little bit, and they'd go, "Oh, we better break up because they're going to think we're conspiring or something." And I'm like, what? Obviously, I mean, for me, it was the first company where I had enough black people to talk to.
Right.
But is that what it is? Is it conspiracy? Is it a conspiracy thing? Is it?
I catch myself doing it. I do. If we stand around too long, I'll be like, "Oh, let me hop in here and look busy."
I kind of like it as a joke because it was just like you know what the outside world is thinking with all of us standing around talking, not actually doing anything, just talking.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But that perception is there. Like,
well, you guys are having too much fun.
It connects all the way
Well, what
back
you guys
to
talking about?
Yeah, what
the
you guys
ugly
talking about? You're
times,
having too much
right?
fun.
Yeah.
Because they're laughing.
That connects all the way back to the ugly times.
Ugly
right?
times.
Yeah.
Laughing, no.
Oh yeah, you can't laugh.
You can't laugh out there either.
Enjoy yourself.
No. But I never, that's a good point.
But it is
going back to.
I think it ties back.
to slavery, where if you were spending any time congregating and not working, you're not getting the stuff done.
And you are likely up to no good.
Yes.
Yeah, that that reminds me of, and there's a video on it's probably on YouTube. It's Muhammad Ali, and he was in this hotel, and he had met with Dr. King, and so this reporter was like, "Hey, Muhammad, what were you guys talking about?" And Muhammad Ali, this is Muhammad Ali, where it said, "Every time brothers get together, it's always a problem. They doing something bad or they doing something good, but it's a problem if they together, you know." And so, and I just like, man, no matter what, you can't win. But you know, and I like that Dr. King just said, you know, we had a discussion which will remain private, like anybody else. It's a group of friends just having a talk. You know, we're not bothering anybody. We're keeping to ourselves. We're, you know, that's it. Just like if there was 4 or 5 white guys talking.
Right.
You know?
What's the difference?
But yeah, so it's just funny.
Okay. That's very funny. Oh my gosh. Well, gentlemen, I think our time is coming to a close here.
Wow.
I
feel
know.
like we just started.
It just feels like we just
Already?
started. I know. People were wanting us to come back, and then we're doing it live. I was used
Just a
to.
warm up.
Yeah.
We're not in a box anymore.
No.
Oh no.
So this has been good.
Oh, definitely.
Any last thoughts before we? And I do appreciate all of you being here. But any last thoughts? Something to share with our audience here, with our college community, education, higher ed.
It's not the professor's fault.
That's
I'm
good.
gonna keep throwing it out
I
there.
like that.
I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna fight for us because I'm just leaving it out there. As some of you may not know, I was an academic advisor, retention coordinator at TCC before I became faculty. So I have that side of me. So I know what it feels like to be on that side. But I promise you, we just need help on the faculty side. I know we don't call for help, but we need it. Because it's just, I think there is a gap. There's a gap there where, and this is me personally speaking, I hate that we removed the standards from like our running start, because we got students it's actually hurting them actually worse than getting them better, because they're not prepared for college. And then that transcript is not going anywhere. So it's hurting them and they're not prepared. And you know, as a professor here, you get the brunt of it, and it's like I have gave everything I can to help,
Right.
and give direction, and I'm like tapped out, like I don't know which way to go anymore. So I'm not putting that pressure on any of my phenomenal staff out there. I think it's a gap, and it's like we got to start figuring out who we think is prepared and who's not prepared. And also, I did want to chime in real quick on something when you're talking about exposure. And if my outreach folks are here, love my outreach folks, I was outreach too. Last year, some students came in and visited our forensic lab in SH 156, and 2 young brothers came up to me and hugged me real tight and got emotional and said, "You're the first black professor I've ever seen. And I told them, you know, you're welcome to come here. I will teach you in this program. Even if you're not in this program, I'll still guide you. But it's just remarkable. And it gets me emotional. I probably go in my car and cry a little bit. But it's emotional because it's like, wow, I never thought that my presence and where I'm at, it brings so much fulfillment to a young boy, a young woman of color. I had young girls too that were just emotionally like, wow, I never seen this. So it does happen here on campus when outreach bring folks, and it's just like, I just keep it to myself. Sorry about that. I keep it to myself because I don't want to make myself feel like, oh, I'm just like the holy grail. I'm not, because I'm like, I was that kid before.
Right.
I didn't have any black teachers growing up. So just, that's something I want to leave, is just help us. But otherwise, just continue bringing exposure to this campus, all students of whatever background. And I'll continue doing the same because I do all my own recruitment of my own program. A lot of my nonprofits I go to that help mainly students of color, I've been fighting to get them here on campus. We lost Ha, so now it's been harder to get them back on schedule, to bring them in to see a college campus. These kids has never seen one. Just seeing it can change their perception on life. So
Totally. Yeah.
that's why I want to leave.
Okay. Anybody else? Before I get chopped in half here?
Good.
Can I give a shout out?
Please, please.
I wanted to give a shout out to all of the women in the Black Caucus who have shown so much support throughout all the events, and even just, you know, welcoming me into the caucus. I appreciate it. I think sometimes in life, you know, women don't get the credit that they deserve. So I want to extend the, you know, just let them know I appreciate that. When I came here, you know, like anybody else, first day of school, you're kind of like, where do I fit in? But, you know, they all welcomed me with open arms, and I was able to meet, you know, other people and these brothers, and, you know, I appreciate it. And I just hope we can all keep the conversation going after this show.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. All right. Well, I'm going to invite my colleague and friend, and she calls me Uncle Mark. Today she yelled at me.
She's Uncle Mark.
But I do, yeah, she calls me Uncle Mark.
Man, how old are you? Man, Uncle Mark.
So I want to thank you guys. Got a little something
Hello?
here.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I did talk about you, because I
Yes.
got up and put all this whole outfit together. Okay, it's not easy.
So I'm going to give you guys.
Thank you.
Oh,
Some chocolates.
No, not chocolates.
It would be fitting.
So this is our last show of the season,
Yes, it is.
and we have, hopefully, we'll be back
For season 3,
for
hopefully.
season 3, hopefully, if people want us, we'll see. Other than that, I don't know if there's.
Thank you, everyone, for our ride for season 2 with our different formats. So I greatly appreciate it. It's the first time we did live audience. Thank you guys for your feedback. Thank you for supporting us through that journey. We'll see what season 3 has for Hold Us. Thank you guys again.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.